The Arcturian Observatory buzzed with unprecedented activity. Thousands of holographic displays cast their ethereal glow across the vast chamber, each showing the same haunting image. The ancient Nexus station, dormant for millennia, had suddenly awakened. Chief Scientist Zaxel, their crystalline form shimmering with anxiety, addressed the assembled Galactic Council through their neural translator. "The station's activation sequence has begun," they announced, their harmonics wavering. "If we cannot access its systems within 30 standard cycles, the quantum cascade will begin. Our models suggest it would tear apart the fabric of space-time across 17 sectors." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from over 300 species projected their voices and emotions simultaneously, creating a cacophony of terror. Admiral Vix of the Centaurian fleet slammed all 4 appendages against their hover platform, demanding order. "We've sent 12 expeditions." The Admiral's bioluminescent patterns flashed with frustration. "The station's environmental systems are impossible to bypass. The radiation levels alone would liquefy most known species within minutes." In the far corner of the chamber, Dr. Sarah Chen of the United Earth Alliance sat quietly, reviewing the station's readings on her neural interface. As humanity's lead xenorchaeologist, she'd spent the last 5 years studying the mysterious builders of the Nexus. Now, watching the panic spread through the chamber, a realization slowly dawned. "The radiation signatures," she whispered, then louder, "the radiation signatures match Earth's Van Allen belts." The chamber fell silent as thousands of alien eyes turned toward her. Chen stood, her heart racing, but her voice steady. "The environmental conditions inside the station, the radiation levels, the gravity, the atmospheric pressure, they're almost identical to Earth's most extreme regions." "Impossible." Zaxel's crystal structure vibrated with disbelief. "No sentient species could evolve in such hostile conditions." Chen smiled. "We did. What you call impossible conditions, we call home." The station wasn't designed to keep people out. It was designed to ensure only those tough enough could enter. Admiral Vix's bioluminescence shifted to a thoughtful purple. "Your species. You're from what our databases classify as a death world." "Class 12 death world," Chen confirmed. "We evolved under crushing gravity, constant radiation, extreme temperature variations, and an atmosphere thick with corrosive oxygen. Our bodies are reinforced with an internal skeleton of calcium. Essentially, we're naturally armored." The Council's fear began to transform into desperate hope. Zaxel's crystalline form sparkled with renewed energy. "Could your people survive inside the station?" "We wouldn't just survive," Chen said, pulling up her own data models. "Those conditions are well within human tolerance ranges. We have deep-sea workers who handle greater pressures, space miners who endure higher radiation doses, and soldiers who train in worse gravity conditions." The council leader, a being of pure energy contained within a quantum field, moved forward. "Dr. Chen, humanity has been part of the galactic community for less than a decade. Many considered your species too primitive, too aggressive for full membership. But now you may be our only hope." Chen activated her comm unit, already composing a message to Earth Command. "We'll need a specialized team. Deep space veterans, radiation workers, gravity adapters, people used to working in extreme conditions. You have access to anything you need," the council leader declared. "Our most advanced ships, our best technology, our full resources. But time is critical. The station's activation sequence cannot be stopped." As Chen left the chamber, already planning team selections in her mind, she heard the aliens whispering among themselves. The primitive Deathworlders, the violent species they'd barely trusted with faster-than-light technology, had suddenly become the galaxy's best hope for survival. She smiled to herself, remembering an old Earth saying, "Necessity makes unlikely heroes of us all." The galaxy was about to learn why humans thrived in conditions that other species considered impossible. They weren't just survivors, they were pioneers of the impossible, and the Nexus station was just their latest frontier. Back on Earth, in the reinforced bunker of the United Earth Alliance headquarters, the Emergency Council was already convening. Humanity's greatest challenge, and perhaps its greatest opportunity, awaited in the stars above. The Deathworlders were about to show the galaxy exactly what they were capable of. Commander Maya Rodriguez stood at the viewport of the UEA Endurance, watching as engineers swarmed over its hull, integrating alien technology with human ingenuity. The ship, originally a Centaurian long-range explorer, had been stripped down and rebuilt to human specifications in just 15 days. "They still think we're insane," Lieutenant James Foster said, joining her at the viewport. The former deep space mining specialist had been one of the first to volunteer for the mission. "The Arcturian observers nearly had a collective meltdown when we installed manual backup systems." Maya smiled, remembering the aliens' horror at the primitive modifications. "They don't understand why we'd want mechanical overrides when their neural interfaces are more efficient. They never considered what happens when radiation fries electronics." The ship's intercom crackled. "Commander, Dr. Chen requests your presence in the cargo bay. The last of the equipment has arrived." The cargo bay was organized chaos. Crates of specialized gear lined the walls while team members ran final checks on their environmental suits. These weren't the sleek, automated suits favored by the Galactic Council races. These were heavily modified deep mining suits, built to withstand the worst conditions humans had ever survived. Dr. Chen stood amid the activity, arguing with a holographic projection of Admiral Vix. "With all due respect, Admiral, we need these modifications. Your ship's life support systems aren't designed for our requirements." Those modifications reduced the ship's efficiency by 30%. Vix's bioluminescence pulsed with frustration. "Better inefficient than dead," Maya interrupted, joining them. "Your ships are impressive, Admiral, but they're built for endurance over months. We need to survive extreme conditions for hours. Different problems require different solutions." The Admiral's patterns shifted to a resigned blue. "The Council still believes this mission is suicide. 23 days until the quantum cascade begins, and we're placing our hopes in—" They paused, searching for a diplomatic term. "In primitive Deathworlders," Maya finished. "Good thing we're too primitive to know what's impossible." After the Admiral's hologram faded, Chen turned to Maya. "Team selections are final. 20 operators, divided into 4 strike teams, each specializing in different extreme conditions." Maya nodded, pulling up the roster on her neural interface. Team Alpha, led by herself, would handle the high radiation zones. Beta Team, under Foster, would tackle the crushing gravity sections. Charlie Team, commanded by deep-sea veteran Sarah O'Connor, would manage the high-pressure areas. Delta Team, led by Arctic operations expert Dr. Victor Petrov, would deal with the temperature extremes. "The aliens provided everything we asked for," Chen continued, gesturing at the modified equipment. "Though they think our requests are bizarre. They can't understand why we want physical tools when they have matter manipulators." "Because you can't reboot a hammer," Maya said, a saying that had become popular among the human team. "What's the latest on the station's defenses?" Chen projected a hologram of the Nexus station, multiple layers of security, all tied to environmental conditions. The builders wanted to ensure only species tough enough to handle extreme conditions could access the core. "The aliens think it's a defense system. I think it's a test." "A test we're built to pass," Maya said, watching her team prepare. Each member had been chosen not just for their experience in extreme conditions, but for their ability to innovate when everything went wrong. Because in their line of work, everything always went wrong. The ship's AI announced the 15-minute warning for final launch preparations. Maya took a last look around the cargo bay, at the humans checking equipment, making last-minute modifications, and supporting each other. The aliens saw them as primitive for relying on physical redundancies and mechanical backups. They didn't understand that humans had learned their caution the hard way, through centuries of exploring their own deadly world. Time to show the galaxy what primitives can do, Maya announced to her team. We've got 23 days to prevent a catastrophe that would destroy 17 sectors. The good news is we got everything we need. Tough suits, good tools, and most importantly, the stubbornness to keep trying until we succeed. As the team moved to their launch positions, Maya caught snippets of conversation. Engineers double-checking suit seals, veterans sharing tips for handling extreme conditions, scientists reviewing data on the station's systems. The aliens had given them their best technology, but humanity's real strength lay in their hard-earned wisdom. No plan survives contact with reality. Always have a backup for your backup, and sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. The Endurance's engines hummed to life, their modified power core purring with barely contained energy. In 20 minutes, they would begin their approach to the Nexus station. In 23 days, they would either save the galaxy or witness the beginning of its end. But right now, in this moment, humanity was doing what it did best, preparing to venture into impossible conditions, armed with determination, ingenuity, and the unshakable belief that impossible was just another word for hasn't been done yet. The Nexus station loomed before them, its ancient hull gleaming with strange energies. From the Endurance's command deck, Maya watched as her team's shuttle approached the massive structure. The station's outer layer pulsed with bands of radiation that would have killed most galactic species instantly. Alpha Team, approaching primary docking point, Maya reported, both to her crew and to the fleet of alien ships maintaining a safe distance. Radiation levels are interesting. Admiral Vix's voice crackled through the comm. Your sensors must be malfunctioning. Those levels are beyond lethal. For you, Navy Lieutenant Foster replied from his position at operations. For us, it's Tuesday. The joke had become a running theme among the human crew, though their alien observers never seemed to appreciate the humor. The shuttle's hull creaked as they passed through the first radiation band. Their modified shields, combining alien tech with human practical experience, held steady. Maya watched the readings with professional interest. The radiation patterns weren't random. They formed specific sequences, like a complex lock mechanism. Dr. Chen, Maya called over the comm. Are you seeing this? The radiation isn't just a barrier, it's information. Confirmed. Chen's voice came back, excited. The patterns match ancient Earth cave paintings. These aren't defense systems. They're signposts. The builders left instructions, but only species who could survive reading them would find them. Maya smiled grimly. Humanity's curse of evolving on a high-radiation world had just become their greatest advantage. Foster, begin pattern analysis. O'Connor, prep your team for the pressure zones. Petrov, stand by for thermal variations. The shuttle passed through the final radiation barrier and approached a vast airlock. As they drew closer, the station's ancient systems hummed to life. A scan swept over their vessel, analyzing its occupants. Biological entities detected. An ancient voice echoed through their comms, speaking in a language that sounded eerily like Proto-Indo-European. Radiation tolerance. Acceptable. Gravitational adaptation. Acceptable. Atmospheric resistance. Acceptable. Proceeding with primary challenges. The airlock cycled open, revealing a massive chamber beyond. The alien observers watched through the shuttle's feeds as the human team prepared to enter. Maya checked her modified environment suit one last time. The aliens had called them primitive for insisting on physical seals and mechanical backups. Now those primitive features might be their salvation. Remember, Maya addressed her team. We've trained for worse conditions than this. Trust your instincts, trust your equipment, and trust each other. Alpha Team with me. Beta Team, stand by for gravity variations. Charlie and Delta, maintain position until we secure the primary chamber. The moment Maya's team stepped through the airlock, the station's challenges began. Gravity shifted wildly, radiation levels spiked, and atmosphere pressure fluctuated between deep sea levels and near vacuum. But where other species would have found these conditions lethal, the humans pushed forward. Just like the Mariana mining operation, O'Connor commented over the comm, her voice steady despite the crushing pressure. Though the view's better. They advanced through the chamber, their movements sure despite the changing conditions. The alien observers watched in stunned silence as the humans not only survived but worked efficiently in conditions their own species couldn't even measure safely. First checkpoint reached, Maya reported, studying the ancient controls before her. The station's interface was surprisingly physical. Buttons, levers, and mechanical switches. More proof this place was built for species who evolved in extreme conditions. You need actual muscles to operate these controls. Commander, Chen's voice carried a note of discovery. The station's not just testing our physical tolerance, it's testing our problem-solving abilities. These challenges, they're getting progressively more complex. As if to prove her point, the chamber suddenly filled with a familiar sound, the distinct crackle of ionized air. Maya's radiation sensors spiked off the scale. Solar flare simulation, she announced, her voice calm. Just like the Mercury stations. Everyone remember your training. The alien observers erupted in panic as radiation levels reached what they considered impossibly lethal levels. But the human team moved with practiced precision, using the station's own architecture as shielding while they worked to stabilize the systems. Foster's voice came over the comm, tinged with amusement. Anyone else feel like we're taking some kind of cosmic entrance exam? If we are, Maya replied, her hands moving surely over the ancient controls. Then humanity's been preparing for it our entire existence. Every disaster we survived, every harsh condition we conquered. It was all training for this moment. The radiation storm subsided, and new doorways opened deeper into the station. The path ahead would only get more challenging, but Maya felt a surge of confidence. The aliens had called them primitive for their physical redundancies, their mechanical backups, their crude adaptations to harsh conditions. But those very traits were exactly what the station's builders had been looking for. Next phase beginning, the ancient voice announced, preparing gravitational challenge sequence. Maya signaled to Foster's team. Beta team, you're up. Show them why humans from high-gravity worlds don't know the meaning of the word impossible. The mission was far from over, but they had passed the first true test. And in doing so, they had proven that humanity's greatest perceived weaknesses, their physical adaptations to a harsh world, their primitive reliance on mechanical systems, their stubborn refusal to accept limitations, were actually their greatest strengths. 18 hours into the mission, Maya's team faced a truth that every human explorer knew well. No plan survived contact with reality. The Nexus station had revealed its true nature, and it was far more complex than anyone had imagined. Multiple system failures in Section 7, Foster reported, his voice steady despite the crushing 15G environment. Environmental controls are cascading. Temperatures dropping in the outer rings and rising in the core. Pressure differentials are reaching deep sea levels. Through the reinforced viewport, Maya watched as crystalline structures grew across the chamber walls, beautiful but lethal formations created by the extreme conditions. The station wasn't just testing them anymore. It was combining challenges in ways that pushed even human tolerances to their limits. Status report, she commanded, her voice carrying to all teams through their hardened comm systems. Charlie team holding position, O'Connor responded. We've stabilized the pressure zones using the manual overrides. Those primitive mechanical backups are proving their worth. Delta team advancing through the thermal barriers. Petrov added, his accent thicker under stress. Temperature extremes are approaching Antarctic winter conditions, but we're managing. The station appears to be learning from our responses. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the comm static. Commander, I've decoded more of the ancient data patterns. This isn't just a test. It's an evaluation system. The station is actively adapting its challenges based on our performance. Maya processed this as she helped Foster navigate through a particularly dense radiation field. The aliens watching from their safe distance had fallen silent hours ago, their sensors overwhelmed by conditions they couldn't even measure. But humanity's primitive mechanical gauges kept working, kept providing data even as electronic systems failed. New theory, Chen continued, excitement breaking through her professional tone. The station's builders weren't looking for simple survival capabilities. They were searching for species that could adapt, innovate, and overcome increasingly complex challenges. They wanted to find others like themselves. A massive tremor shook the station. Warning lights flashed across Maya's helmet display as multiple systems approached critical levels. This was the moment that separated survival from disaster. The kind of moment humans had faced countless times throughout their history. All teams, implement contingency Delta, Maya ordered. It was a distinctly human plan, one that had made their alien advisors recoil in horror when they'd first suggested it. We're going to overload the primary systems. Commander, Admiral Vix's voice crackled through the emergency channel. Your own calculations show that would create conditions unsurvivable by any known species. Exactly, Maya replied, already moving to her position. The station keeps escalating until we prove we can handle anything it throws at us. So let's show it everything we've got. The human teams moved with practiced precision, each member knowing their role. They'd drilled this scenario dozens of times, refining it despite the aliens' insistence that it was suicidal. But humans had learned long ago that sometimes the best way to handle overwhelming force was to redirect it rather than resist it. Ready on your mark, Foster reported. Around the station, other team leaders echoed his call. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. Execute contingency Delta. All teams, brace for extreme conditions. The next few minutes proved why humans had survived and thrived on their death world. As systems overloaded and environmental conditions reached theoretical impossibility, the human teams didn't just endure, they worked. Every member fell back on their training, their experience, their instinctive understanding of extreme conditions. When the cascade finally ended, Maya watched in satisfaction as new patterns emerged across the station's ancient displays. The mechanical systems they'd labeled as primitive had weathered conditions that had fried more advanced technology. The physical backups they'd insisted on installing had preserved their ability to function when neural interfaces failed. Commander, Chen's voice held a note of awe. The station's responding. New data patterns are emerging. I think we just passed some kind of final test. The station's central core began to pulse with a deep, resonant energy. Ancient machinery, dormant for millennia, hummed to life. The voice that echoed through their comms now held a different tone, not challenging, but welcoming. Analysis complete, it announced. Species demonstrates required attributes: physical adaptation, technological innovation, cooperative problem-solving, and strategic thinking. Emergency protocols deactivated. Access granted to primary systems. As the human teams regrouped and began accessing the station's core functions, Maya couldn't help but smile at the irony. The very traits that had made other species view humans as primitive, their physical resilience, their insistence on mechanical backups, their crude adaptations to harsh conditions, had proven to be exactly what the station's ancient builders had been looking for. Dr. Chen, she called, begin core systems analysis. Let's find out what this place was really built for. The quantum cascade that had threatened 17 sectors was no longer counting down. They had stopped the immediate crisis, but Maya suspected their real discoveries were just beginning. The aliens observing from their fleet would never look at humans quite the same way again. The primitive Deathworlders had proven that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones, and that true advancement meant being prepared for anything, even if that preparation looked primitive to others. 3 days after humanity passed the Nexus Station's final test, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The massive chamber, usually organized by species and environmental requirements, had been transformed. Human engineers had modified the environmental systems, allowing representatives from all species to attend without their usual protective pods, a small example of how humanity's practical experience with harsh conditions was already changing galactic society. Dr. Chen stood at the center of the chamber, her holographic displays showing the incredible data they'd recovered from the station's core. Behind her, Commander Rodriguez and her team sat in their informal Earth uniforms, a stark contrast to the ornate robes of the council members. The Nexus station wasn't a weapon or a threat, Chen explained, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. It was a legacy. The builders were like us, a species that evolved on a harsh world, adapted to extreme conditions, and developed both physical and technological solutions to survive. The holographic displays showed images of the builders reconstructed from the station's databanks. They were different from humans in appearance, but their equipment, their tools, their practical approaches to problems showed a familiar philosophy. They seeded the galaxy with these stations, Chen continued, each one containing their accumulated knowledge and technology. But they wanted to ensure this knowledge would only be accessed by species capable of using it responsibly, species that understood the value of both advanced technology and practical physical solutions. And they chose these harsh conditions as their test. Admiral Vix observed, their bioluminescence showing patterns of deep thought. They wanted to find species that could not only survive extreme conditions, but thrive in them. Maya stepped forward. The quantum cascade was never a threat. It was an attention-getting device, designed to activate when the station detected a species with the potential to pass its tests. The station created a crisis that could only be solved by the kind of species the builders were looking for. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. The revelation that humanity's primitive traits had been exactly what the ancient builders were seeking challenged many long-held assumptions about technological progress and species development. The builders left us more than just technology, Chen said, bringing up new displays. They left us a message and a mission. There are more stations out there, each containing different aspects of their knowledge. They believe that species who evolved on harsh worlds, who learned to combine physical adaptation with technological innovation, were best suited to explore and understand the galaxy's most extreme environments. Where your species sees harsh conditions that must be avoided, Maya added, we see opportunities for exploration and discovery. The builders understood this perspective. They wanted to find others who shared it. The council leader rose, their energy form pulsing with decision. Humanity joined our community less than a decade ago. Many questioned whether you were ready for full membership. Some saw your physical adaptations and mechanical solutions as signs of primitive development. They paused, looking around the chamber. We were wrong. Your species' unique perspectives and capabilities are not primitive. They are essential. The declaration sparked a transformation in the chamber. Representatives who had once dismissed humans as primitive Deathworlders now approached them with questions about adaptation and survival. Species that had hidden behind protective technology began discussing ways to incorporate human-style practical redundancies into their systems. The builders left us a gift, Chen concluded, but more importantly, they left us a challenge. There are mysteries in this galaxy that can only be solved by those willing to face harsh conditions directly. Humanity is ready to help explore these mysteries and to share what we learn, both our successes and our failures. As the session concluded, Maya found herself looking out at the stars through the chamber's vast windows. The Nexus station hung there, no longer threatening, but promising. Its harsh tests had proven that humanity's greatest perceived weaknesses, their evolution on a death world, their stubborn insistence on physical backups, their practical approach to problem-solving, were actually their greatest strengths. Ready for the next challenge? Chen asked, joining her at the window. Maya smiled, thinking of the other stations waiting to be discovered, other mysteries to be solved. Humanity had evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them, and they had learned not just to survive, but to thrive. Now they would help lead the galaxy into its own harsh frontiers. Always ready, she replied. After all, exploring the impossible is what humans do best. The galactic community was changing. Species that had once hidden from harsh conditions began learning from humanity's example. The Deathworlders had become teachers, showing that true advancement meant being prepared for anything, and that sometimes the oldest solutions were still the best ones. As ships from various species began preparing for joint missions to find other Nexus stations, humanity had achieved something even greater than passing the Builder's tests. They had helped the galaxy understand that facing challenges directly, whether through physical adaptation or technological innovation, was not primitive. It was the key to unlocking the universe's greatest mysteries. The age of the Deathworlders had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.